When you hear the word nuclear, you might think of giant cooling towers, radiation warnings, or even Homer Simpson pressing buttons at a power plant. But how does nuclear energy actually work? In just a few minutes, let's break it down simply. Everything around us is made of atoms. And inside the nucleus of certain atoms, like uranium-235, there's a ton of energy locked away. So why uranium-235? Because it has the perfect nuclear recipe. It's fissionable. It can split when hit by a neutron. It works with slow thermal neutrons, making it easier to control. It produces a lot of energy. For example, 1 kilogram of U-235 can release as much energy as 1.5 million kilograms of coal. When we split U-235 atoms in a process called fission, a small amount of matter turns into a huge amount of energy. This is Einstein's famous equation in action, E equals mc squared. Just one uranium pellet, about the size of a fingertip, can produce as much energy as a ton of coal. So how do we get that energy out? In a nuclear power plant, uranium fuel rods are placed in a reactor core. Inside the core, neutrons collide with uranium atoms, splitting them and releasing heat and more neutrons. This creates a chain reaction, controlled and steady, not an explosion. The heat produced is used to boil water, creating steam. That steam spins a turbine, which drives a generator, and that's how we get electricity. So, yes, just like coal or gas plants, it's really just boiling water to spin a turbine, but with a much smaller fuel footprint. Let's talk about what makes people uneasy: nuclear safety. When most people hear nuclear, they think of disasters like Chernobyl or Fukushima, accidents that, while rare, had serious consequences. That fear has driven some countries away from nuclear energy altogether, but it's also led to some of the most advanced safety systems in the world. Modern reactors are designed with multiple layers of protection. 1. Fuel rods are sealed in durable metal casings. 2. The reactor core is enclosed in steel and thick concrete. 3. Control systems can shut down the reaction in seconds. And 4. New designs use passive safety features that don't require human input or power. These systems are built to prevent overheating and radiation release, even in extreme situations. Still, the risk is hotly debated. Critics argue that even a tiny chance of a meltdown, or the challenge of storing radioactive waste, is too much. Supporters point out that nuclear has one of the lowest death rates per unit of energy and no carbon emissions. It's a trade-off between catastrophic potential and the urgency of the climate crisis and rising energy demand, and different countries are weighing that balance in very different ways. Despite the risks, many scientists, engineers, and governments still see nuclear power as a key part of the future, especially as the world tries to cut carbon emissions and fight climate change. Here's why nuclear is still on the table. It produces no carbon emissions during operation. It generates huge amounts of energy from a tiny amount of fuel, and it's reliable. Unlike solar or wind, nuclear doesn't depend on the weather. Some countries, like France, get over 70% of their electricity from nuclear. Others, like the US, Canada, and China, are investing in new nuclear technologies to make it safer, cheaper, and more flexible. Let's break down a few of those technologies. 1. Small modular reactors, SMRs. These are like the compact version of traditional nuclear plants, designed to be built in factories and shipped to site. They are cheaper to build, easier to deploy in remote or rural areas, and often include passive safety systems that don't require electricity or human intervention. Second, there are thorium reactors. Instead of uranium, these use thorium, a more abundant element that's harder to weaponize and produces less long-lived waste. Thorium reactors are still in the experimental phase, but they've gained attention for their safety potential and sustainability. Third, there are fusion reactors. This is the holy grail of clean energy. Instead of splitting atoms, like fission, fusion joins them together, the same process that powers the sun. Fusion produces no long-lived radioactive waste, can't melt down, and uses hydrogen isotopes as fuel. It's not quite ready for the grid yet, but projects like ITER and new private startups are working fast. So while traditional nuclear plants are still in use today, the future may look very different, smaller, safer, cleaner, and even more powerful. And for many, that's worth investing in, especially as the world races toward cleaner energy. So how does nuclear energy work? And it's really about splitting atoms, heating water, and spinning turbines. But it all starts with something smaller than you can see, producing more energy than you might believe. From submarines to space probes, and maybe someday small plants in every town, nuclear power is already here, and possibly just getting started. Subscribe for more big ideas explained simply.